The First World War saw many advances in the technology of warfare, but possibly the most cutting-edge tech in use was aeroplanes. Although their military uses were few at the time, many saw their potential. To that end, Colonel Sefton Brancker conceived the idea that eventually became the Aerial Gunnery School here at Loch Doon. An ambitious project that brought roads, rails and thousands of men to work in this remote area of southwest Scotland. It became one of the most colossal wastes of public money, not just at the time, but for a very long time afterwards. Reports that up to £3 million had passed through Dalmellington Post Office to finance its creation led to outcry. That's approximately 327 million in modern terms, and it led to precisely nothing of any useful value. Not quite HS2 proportions of wastage, but neither an insignificant amount of money nor one unworthy of the scandal it caused at the time. Now, once Colonel Brancker had settled on Loch Doon, choosing it because it was a large body of landlocked water and because of the steepness of the hills that flank it, they were useful for the monorail track the target bogies would run on. While he had been on service in France, he had seen a facility near Bordeaux designed to train pilots to use guns from the cockpit of their planes. He used his pre-war position as Deputy Director of Military Aeronautics to lobby for his project. To bring the materials needed for construction, a new railway line was built from Dalmellington Station down to Dalfarson Platform by Craigengillan House. There was a proposal to build a rail tunnel from there to the loch side at a cost of £150,000. That's around about £13 million now, but it was not followed through on. Interestingly, it was this proposal that may well have led to the reappraisal and abandonment of the school. Men and materials were transported to the loch from the rail platform by foot or road. There is little of it remaining now, apart from a section of platform at Dalfarson. Now, most of the contractors and trainees were travelling by rail from Ayr daily to the site, but accommodation was to be built for 500 trainees, 1,500 McAlpine contractors for the building of the project, and an additional 1,200 German POWs for labour at Loch Doon. Not only that, but part of the plans included a 400-seat cinema to keep the troops entertained, sewage works to support the site, 2 large hangars for the planes, a site for the seaplanes, a workshop and stores, and of course the light monorail for the target bogies. The project also involved the building of a small dam here at the north end of the loch where the River Doon begins. This was to provide hydroelectric for the school. It raised the level of the loch by 6 feet, 1.8 metres, which was not significant enough to affect the castle. If any consideration was given to the salmon hatching sites in the loch, there is no record of it, but certainly it did not seem to be an issue by the time they were designing the salmon ladder for the Galloway hydro scheme. So, what went wrong then? It was really quite simple. Although Loch Doon seemed like an ideal site at first for the school, no one had taken into account the bogginess of the ground here. Now, they hadn't made many friends in the area anyway by commandeering houses and land for the project, but they did not help themselves at all by not paying attention to local knowledge before commencing building. Questions were raised in the Houses of Parliament about the failure of the project to do just that by the MP for Kilmarnock, Alexander Shaw, and the matter was referred to investigation by a Commons committee. A report in the Scotsman in 2018 about the school cites James Shaw, County Clerk of Ayrshire at the time, who attended a meeting with uniformed officers about the project at the Station Hotel in Ayr in 1916 and recalled that it was clearly explained by the engineers and others with knowledge of the ground that it would be impossible to land planes near the loch because of the deep moss. The officials were disappointed and said that it could be drained. Now, as anyone who has worked the land in Galloway and East Ayrshire knows, it really wasn't that simple. An alternative site at Bogton Loch was eventually found, as the site at Loch Doon could not be drained. But while this was more feasible than the site at Loch Doon, it still took considerable work to achieve, and it never got to be operational anyway. Because by this point, serious questions were being asked about the cost of the whole project and its viability. But it wasn't just the bogginess of the ground that caused problems. The crosswinds in the glen could make takeoff and landing extremely difficult for the light and delicate aircraft of the time. Additionally, the speeds of the targets on rails were insufficient for the task of training the pilots in the warfare they were expected to be undertaking. It was the stubbornness of the Department for Military Aeronautics in continuing the project beyond 1917, when they discovered the targets were not up to the job, that was criticised by the Select Committee report into the matter. Once again, according to the Scotsman article, their report stated, at that time, the whole situation ought to have been reviewed, and the authorities should then have acknowledged the mistake that had been made and stopped the work. It concluded that the Aerial Gunnery School scheme will be remembered as the scene of one of the most striking instances of wasted expenditure that our records can show. What remains now are little bits of concrete runway, railway cuttings and the odd building. Much of what was built has been submerged beneath the surface of the loch by the hydro scheme, so there really is very little left to show for the fantastic waste of money that was the Loch Doon Aerial Gunnery School.